Graduate from Ibrahim College in London with an Alamiya degree in Arabic language, Islamic sciences and Hadith, and the University of Warwick, a master's degree, mashallah, in Islamic education. Sheikh Shabbir is the spiritual facilitator for Faith Space UK and the author of A Beautiful Patience, 40 Life Lessons from Surah Yusuf, which has already, alhamdulillah, Ramin, sold thousands of copies. And we have some of those copies here right now with us, inshallah, mashallah, tabarakallah. Please make sure you grab a copy. But don't run, make sure you go online and pay for it, inshallah, and then get our Sheikh's signature, inshallah. It will be a very memorable item that you can keep with you, inshallah, and even gift it to others if you like. Barakallahu feekum, jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulil Kareem wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. We begin by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the most merciful. We ask Him to send His peace and blessings upon His final messenger, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Firstly, Jazakumullah khair to everyone here at the masjid, the MSAs for hosting and for attending, alhamdulillah, and for also your generosity as well. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept it from you all. Inshallah, we're going to get into it. I really appreciate everyone's patience waiting for the program to start. But welcome. This is Love-ology, as you can see. It's an interesting title. A lot of people have asked me what the thinking was behind the title, and my answer always is, I don't know actually. It just, at the time it sounded cool, and now I'm not so sure. So we've just stuck by it, alhamdulillah. But the idea is, we're of course going to be discussing marriage, right? That's one of the main things. But the idea of this specific seminar is to prep those especially who are not yet married, or those on the path of seeking marriage, right? Or even actually those who are newly married, right? So if you fall within that category, then inshallah you are the primary audience. And if you are already married, alhamdulillah, and if you've been married for some time, then you are the secondary audience. And I always say 2 reasons. Number 1 is, for those of us who are married, there's always something we can learn and improve in our relationships, right? Some people think that, getting married is basically the end. That's it. So once you get married, you've done it, and there's no further work to do, there's no further improvements to be made. But anyone who's married and has been married for some time, of course knows that marriage is just the beginning. It's a lifelong journey, inshallah, and there's always ways to improve yourself, to improve the relationship, to improve the dynamics of the marriage. So that's number 1. And number 2 also, if you're perhaps older and you have children who are growing up and maybe soon they're getting married, then actually as parents, it's very good for us to be prepared on behalf of our children, meaning for us to know, especially if there's like you could call it like a generational gap, right? It's important to know in this generation what's happening, right? And for the past 8 or 9 years, I've been, especially in the UK, I've been heavily involved in this area of marriage. Alhamdulillah, I've been officiating a lot of nikah ceremonies. I think more than now 600, almost 700 nikah ceremonies over the course of the years. And what that means is that I've been working with a lot of couples, hundreds of couples over the years. And I've been seeing their journey, before they get married, of course. We speak to the couple, we help them to get married on the day and so on. Many times we stay in touch with them also. And what I've been doing over the last 8, 9 years is I've been keeping, like a close eye on the trends, a close eye on, of course, the common questions, the common issues that couples face, right? The common, you could say, obstacles that they face, the trends just in general, what's been happening on the ground. So a lot of what I discuss within this seminar is not just, theory, or it's not just, just fiqh or the legal side of things. Inshallah, I hope it's very practical. It's me sharing, what's actually happening, what young Muslims are actually facing. Because I think we're at a stage now where young Muslims, they want the solutions as opposed to us just talking about problems. Okay, this is the problem that you might face. This is the issue that you might face. We want to discuss the practical solutions, and we want to also learn from those who have gone through the marriage or gone through the journey in recent times, as opposed to using statistics or data from 10, 20, 30 years ago, right? Because things have changed. Inshallah, that's the plan. But what I wanted to start with actually is, the title is Love-ology. So what I always do is, before we even discuss the topic of marriage, we always discuss the topic of love. And that's not necessarily the most, let's say, comfortable topic to speak about. Perhaps it's not even a topic that is even discussed at all, right? Why? And you might ask, why love? Like, I'm a young adult, I'm mature, right? Who are you to lecture me about love? Like, I know what love is, yeah? So why discuss love? Actually, what I mean by love is not just love itself, but love is an extension, right, of what we call expectations. So before you get married, there's always a set of expectations that you're going to have. And based on those expectations, right, going into marriage, that could actually define the outcome of your marriage, right? You have an expectation, right? So let's say, for example, I came to Ottawa and I was told that the shawarma in Ottawa apparently is like the best shawarma. Is this sahih or daif? Sahih? Okay, good. So imagine now I've come to Ottawa and everybody's telling me the shawarma is the best shawarma, okay, and it's it's tasty and it's better than Toronto's one, which I've been spending 1 week in Toronto, so and I imagine you build up the hype and the expectation, right? So now I'm thinking it's going to be really good and it's going to be the best shawarma I've had in my life, and that's my expectation. And that's why I go into the shop, even if it's good, by the way. As a human, like just because of my basic human instincts and building up the expectation, maybe I might have it and say, oh, okay, alhamdulillah, it was okay, it's nice. Maybe in the UK we have better shawarma. I don't know, maybe, right? But part of what led to this outcome of me not even being satisfied was my expectation being too high. Sometimes you don't want to have such a high expectation going into something. Not that you should have a low expectation or be negative or pessimistic, but the balance is what? Having a realistic expectation. A realistic expectation. So when it comes to marriage, a lot of people actually have very unrealistic expectations. Now, what has led them to have these unrealistic expectations? It's not just them themselves. There's something that shaped this, right? And for the recent generations, and things have rapidly evolved and changed over the last decade, 15 years, right? So in more recent times, there's been a few factors, right? And one of them, and to be honest, not even like recent times, if I go even further back, right? A lot of us, we grew up watching like movies, okay? Some cartoons maybe, all right? So the most famous would be Disney. Everyone here know Disney? Okay. So a lot of us, when we were kids, like, I don't know when I watched my first Disney film. Maybe when you're 6, 7 years old. Lion King, I don't know. Lion King is Disney, yeah? Lion King, I don't know. What other Disney films are there? The Prince and Princess stories and all of these stuff, right? So imagine from a young age, you're watching a Disney film, right? And what is like, even in Lion King, right? Even though these are animals, right? There's actually like love stories within these films. Every single film you watch, there's a love story, right? There's some relationship. There's someone's going through like a difficulty, right? And then they meet someone and their life changes after meeting them. And then the rest of the film is them pursuing this person. And then they get together with the person at the end, and the film ends with what? And then they lived happily ever after. Okay, and that's the end of the movie. Okay, so you're thinking, wow, I want my happily ever after. I want to find the true love, right? Who's gonna complete my life and make me happy. So what I always say is that the Disney film ended there. But it didn't show you the sequel when they actually got married and what happened in the marriage, right? No one showed you that side. It just showed you the happily ever after. Okay, fine. So we grew up with Disney and the Prince and Princess and the happily ever after films, okay. And then in recent times, subhanAllah, it's not just Disney anymore. Now we have Hollywood, Bollywood, Netflix, all of these different series. And then now we have social media. And subhanAllah, now it's got to a stage where it's not even like films. Like films, you could say, okay, it's an actor, it's an actress, it's dramatized. But now we're actually seeing real people on social media, real married couples who are sharing their lives. So now it's not even a film, it's not even drama. Now it's real couples who are sharing their life. They're married, and we go on their Instagram, whether it's a Muslim couple, a non-Muslim couple, whoever it might be, and we go and we see, they're sharing, they've gone on this nice holiday. They're sharing a nice dinner date that they've had. They're sharing, whatever, okay? Or they've gone to Umrah together, and they're holding hands, and they're doing tawaf together, and you're like, wow, you romanticize this idea of even religion now, okay? So you're observing this, right? And of course, no doubt, goes without saying that this couple, what they've just shared with you is a very tiny snippet of their life. 60 seconds you've just seen of their marriage. And now what's that done? Even unconsciously, it's built an expectation that this is what marriage is. This is what marriage is always going to be like. Okay? So that's what's happening now. That's basically what's happening. So as a result of all of this, we now have an idea, whether we've done this consciously, unconsciously, of what love is, what marriage is, what you get from marriage. So we have this idea. So you go into marriage thinking this is what it's always like. But nobody actually, sits you down and tells you about the reality of marriage. And by the way, that's not to say that you can't have a good time once you're married and you can't go on the holidays. But remember, life gets in the way, yeah? 90% of the time, 95% of the time, you're not on holiday. You're not going on dinner dates, right? You're not out and about. You are at home, or you are at work, or then in future you have children, and you have responsibilities, and there's a lot of things happening here. And if you go into marriage thinking it's going to be like, this, but then it turns out to be something else, for a lot of people, this kind of, they struggle after they get married. They really do struggle, right? And that's why I'm not here to be pessimistic. I'm not here to say marriage isn't about that. But what I'm here to say is, look, this is the reality. And as long as you manage your expectations, right, then inshallah things will be good. And that's why you have to start with this, right? Now, here's what's really interesting. So I'm going to share a few slides with you. And just as a disclaimer, this seminar usually is delivered as a half-day seminar. Okay? Now, today we have like an hour and a half, okay? So, I've had to condense the contents of the seminar, and even a lot of the slides, I haven't been able to go through. Until Qiyamul Layl, Sheikh, inshallah. Tayyib, inshallah. You have to lock the door, Sheikh, make sure nobody leaves, inshallah, okay? So, of course, I've had to condense the contents, and, even some of the slides we can't really go into detail, but I'm going to share as much as I can, inshallah, and try and do justice to this topic. So, one of the first slides I want to share with you, and I want you to have a look on the screen very shortly, it's a survey that was carried out, and not like an Islamic survey, like a general survey that was carried out in the US, actually, a few years ago. And they surveyed married couples, but they also surveyed couples who are not married, but they're living together. So in other words, very committed relationships. And the question they asked them was, why did you get married? Or why did you commit to this person? Have a look at this, okay? Right. So have a look at this behind me. So the green represents those who are married, and the orange represents those who are in a committed relationship, basically living together, so they're quite serious, okay? And there were a number of reasons that they gave, a number of reasons. Look from the bottom to the top, okay? So you have a number of reasons, like it was convenient, we wanted to have children someday, companionship, we just wanted to enter into a formal commitment and union, right? And look at reason number one. Reason number one, everyone. 90% of married couples said that the reason why they got married was because of what? Love. Because, what does that mean? We're in love. We fell in love, we fell in love when we decided to marry each other. That's it. That's the basis of our marriage. And more than 70% who were living together, they gave the same reason. So the number one reason was what? Love. Okay, very interesting. For me, this is very telling, because now look, on paper, to many of you here, you might think, okay, so what's the big deal? What's wrong with that? Love is a good thing. We need more love, it's a good thing to have, right? So I'm not saying that love is a bad thing, of course, right? But what I'm saying is that, put things into context here. These people, their primary reason and the primary basis for marrying a person, meaning committing their life to them, was because they fell in love, because they were in love, or they had a feeling of love, right? And that's ultimately actually what love is. When you break it down, love is a feeling, it's an emotion, right? It's an emotion. And as we know, even as Muslims, that feelings, emotions, they're not a bad thing. It's not a negative thing in and of itself. Can it be negative? Yes, because remember, as Muslims, we're not based on the feeling itself or the emotion. We're based on the action, the result of that feeling or that emotion, where it leads you to. We're judged on that. So, as an example, let's say if I were to ask you, is it haram for you to feel angry Yes or no? Is it haram to feel angry? Yes or no? No, it's not haram to feel angry, right? So, because it's a natural human emotion. So, okay, now, imagine I get so angry that I curse you or I physically, handle someone. That's haram. I'll be judged for that. But if I feel anger and then I suppress my anger, or if I feel anger and I channel my anger through a different way, and release my anger through a different way, not harming anyone, that's fine, not a problem. Likewise, any emotion, like even, let's say, are you allowed to feel sad? Yeah. But it depends what you do with the sadness. Are you allowed to feel happy? Of course. But some people, they can take their happiness to an extreme. Some people, the extreme of happiness is pride. Like, you've bought a new car, okay, and you're so happy with this car that now, you're so overjoyed by having this car that now anyone else who has, a lesser car, right, a car not as good as yours, and you look down on them. This is what happiness leads you to. This is what in the Quran, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions like, لا تفرح إن الله لا يحب الفرحين. You translate that literally, it means don't be happy. لا تفرح. No, it means don't, boast. Don't be boastful. So happy that now you're boastful and you boast about what you have to others, because Allah does not love such people. Make sense? Right? Emotions are fine. It depends what you do. So likewise, love is an emotion, it's a feeling. But of course, it's going to depend what you do with this. And we have different levels of love, and there's different types of love. Like growing up, maybe you had love, parents, you loved your parents, they loved you, siblings, relatives, friends, you can love your friends, and so on, right? People have pets, even they love animals. People love even material things. People love their cars, people love their shoes, people love their phones. I don't know, people love material things. There's different types of love, different degrees of love, right? So love is not a bad thing, right? So even when it comes to marriage, right? You're marrying someone and you have a feeling towards them, you have an attraction towards them. That in and of itself is not a bad thing. But what we're saying here is that enough of a reason to marry that person? What do you think? Just your feeling and your level of attraction towards that person, is that enough for you to make the decision, okay, khalas, let's get married? No, right? That's the point here. So these people that you're seeing behind me, what they're saying is that was the primary reason, because we fell in love. It's this romanticized idea that, you fall in love, you see someone, nowadays you talk about love at first sight even. What even is that? You see someone and you're in love because they're your soulmate and they were meant for you, and so let's just marry them. Okay, but what about everything else? What happens when you don't feel as strongly towards them in future? You can't really control feelings and emotions, because if you feel sad today, you're not necessarily going to feel the same level of sadness tomorrow or next week or next month. So likewise, if you have a strong feeling of desire and love towards someone, what's to say that could over time fade and you don't feel the same way towards them, which is natural, by the way. It's very natural. There's a famous narration, Umar radiallahu anh, when he was a Khalifa, a man came to him and said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, I wish to divorce my wife. And he said, Wayhak, what's wrong with you? Why? And the man said, because I don't love my wife anymore. And bearing in mind, this man, he's not like a teenager or a 20-year-old. This man's like an old man. Okay, he's in his 50s, 60s. And he's saying to Umar radiallahu anh, it's because I don't love my wife anymore. And Umar radiallahu anh said, what's wrong with you? He said to him, what happened to just, being loyal and dedicated and committed to your partner? And he said, does every household have to be built upon love? Does love have to be the foundation every single time? Meaning that there's more than just the feeling of love. There's everything you've been through together in life. There's those memories you created, the children that you have, but just because you don't have love, that's not a good enough reason. And likewise, loving someone is also not a good enough reason to marry them, because there are more important reasons. So again, to clarify, I'm not saying that love or attraction or feeling is a bad thing. I'm saying that should not be the primary foundation of marrying someone. So, of course, we're going to come to what is more important than love or attraction or feelings, and we're going to come to that. What is the more practical reason? But my main message for now is don't make that the primary foundation, because over time what can happen is this feeling can diminish, it can come down, and especially, anything that is new, it's more exciting, correct? Yeah? When you get something new, and I call this the shiny new toy syndrome. Have you heard of this before? Shiny new toy syndrome. So when you have the shiny new toy, yeah, it's like you have a new phone, okay? So let's say, I use Android, you might have an iPhone, iPhone 14, 15, you have the iPhone, okay? And when you first buy the iPhone, what do? You get the screen protector, you have the case on it, okay? You use it very carefully, you don't let anyone else hold the phone, whatever. And this happens for a few weeks, few months, okay? And after a few months go by, after a year goes by, I don't care if I chuck it like that, I don't care anymore. In fact, I'm looking forward to the next phone, upgrading it to the iPhone 15, 16, whatever it is, okay? You buy a new car, same thing. Everything, there's like a shiny new toy syndrome. When a kid has something, like when I buy my daughter like a new toy, the way she treats that toy for the first few, for kids, it's not even days, it's like sometimes hours. That's it. After a few hours, it's like, khalas, I'm done with this. When's the next one, okay? But when, in those first few moments or first few days, they treat that thing so nicely, okay? And then after, it just becomes another toy. So what I'm saying, I'm not comparing, of course, marriage or people to this. But what I'm saying is that it's kind of basic human psychology, that something at the beginning is very new and it's shiny. So you are more excited and you're more passionate towards that thing. And after some time, it's not the same. Marriage is similar in the sense that, of course, when you first get married or before you're getting married, it's very exciting and your feelings are overwhelming and, there's passion, there's so much things happening there, a lot of emotions, right? And then after time, like what happens, it comes down to a balance. I'm not saying it comes down, it's gone. There's a balance now. It's not as exciting as it was initially. So you have to be prepared for this. Because I tell you something, that a lot of people aren't prepared for this, right? And you might think, I'm not that person. I'm not that person. I know how to control my emotions, right? And I'm sorry to share this image, we're in a masjid, right? But this is what happens to a lot of people. They think they are in control, right? And I've seen it with my own eyes, by the way. People that I know personally, family members, friends, they think they know. They think they're in control. But I'm telling you, when you're in the position where you are speaking to someone and you like them and you're attracted to them and your feelings are now overpowering you, love is one of the strongest feelings. So this obviously it's a bit of satire, but this person saying, "Oh, I love you," right? And the sister saying, "Yeah, we just met." Like you don't really like. It's a desire. The desire has overtaken you. In fact, we call it love, but what is it actually? It's lust or infatuation. You've become infatuated by this person. It's a desire. It's a shahwa. It's a desire. It's overtaken you, right? And subhanAllah, there's actually a narration of the Prophet ﷺ. He said, حُبُّكَ الشَّيْء يُعْمِي وَيُسِمْ. This is what he said. He said that your love for something, your love for something can actually make you blind and deaf. Not in the literal sense, but as in it can take over your senses. I've seen this. I have actually seen this, right? Where a person, they're normal, and then they meet someone, and now all of a sudden, it's like, we're trying to get them to snap out of it. What's wrong? Hey, are you there? And they're in a different world now. And we're trying to say to them, look, okay, I understand you like this person, but based on this reason, or there's this red flag, seriously, like this is not the right person for you. But they're saying, no, I have to marry this person now. They've become literally blinded, right? This is what these emotions can do. So even though you think you're strong and you think you can, but when you're in the situation, trust me, nothing can actually prepare you for it. And this is why the first piece of advice is that when you go into this, inshallah, make sure that number one, you're aware of this and you don't let the feelings overcloud your judgment. Yeah? It's very, very, very easy for this to happen. You want to make sure that you're making the right decision. Remember, this is your future, this is your life, right? You want to choose the right person. Nobody wants to choose the wrong person. And if you let your emotions cloud your judgment, then sometimes it does lead to people making rash decisions or the wrong decisions. So you want to just make sure. And the second piece of advice is that it's always good to have someone there in the process. Because when you have that someone, then it's not just you taking this on yourself. You have someone there to also guide and to give you advice. And this someone should be someone, of course, with some experience and someone who's been there before, someone who knows what the process is all about. So that's my first piece of advice. Regarding love is just understanding what it is, understanding that it's a powerful thing. It's not a bad thing, right? And we're going to come to very shortly, inshallah, what should be your primary basis for getting married? What are the main things? What is more important than the love and the feelings and all of these things? We're going to talk about that very, very shortly. And if I forget, then please do remind me, inshallah. Okay, so These are the foundations and these are the expectations that you have going into marriage, inshallah. Going into marriage, you have a set of expectations, and hopefully now you know. Okay, now when people are in the process of getting married, there's many things to factor in. Okay, I'm going to try and summarize, but there's many things to factor in. Now, of course, for many people, the first thing would be, finding a person, right? It's not the case of, okay, today I want to get married, and tomorrow you find someone. That's not necessarily how it works. So, of course, the first thing is finding the person, and that itself is it's a process. And I can't tell you how you're going to find someone, or I can't tell someone else how they're going to find someone. People find people through different means, okay? So I can't control that. But what I am in control of, right? Of course, I'm going to be active in the process. But what I am in control of is, when I do find someone, is making sure that I do everything in my capacity to evaluate the situation, see the person, question, and so on, right? Because of course, there's a few extremes here, right? One extreme is, nobody here is saying that you rush into marriage. You find someone, you don't even speak to them, you don't even look at them, you don't even communicate with them, you you say Bismillah and you get married. That's not actually what we're taught to do. We're not taught to just rush into a decision and make a decision and that's it, without even thinking it through or speaking to the person and doing some research, yeah? But there is an extreme to this as well, the other side. One side is you don't speak, you don't communicate, and you just get married. But there's another extreme to this. And this is the extreme that actually exists today, which is people think, this is the only way for me to get to know someone, right? What is that extreme, which we're going to come to, right? The extreme of basically when you get to know someone, that there are some, you could say barriers and measures in place when it comes to getting to know someone, to make it more, it's protection for you, but also it's a means of making the process more efficient. So we're going to talk about the actual process, right? So we've spoken about love. And by the way, there's 2 books I would recommend you all to read, especially those of you who are not married, and both are written by the same author. A very famous person, his name is Dr. Gary Chapman. Dr. Gary Chapman, okay? And he's actually, he's a Christian, he's someone who's been involved in this for decades, and he's written 2 famous books. One of them is, and perhaps you've heard of this concept, it's called The 5 Love Languages. The 5 Love Languages, okay? So even if you're married, by the way, this is a good book to have. And the second book is called something along the lines of What I Wish I Knew Before We Got Married, something like that. What I Wish I Knew Before We Got Married. These are the 2 books I would recommend you. Same author, very easy to read, very practical, right? The second one is very good because it helps you to, he's basically saying, in retrospect, these are the things I wish I knew before I got married, like all these years ago. And now he's listing them out for us and based on research and things. So it's good for us to know these things. And the first book was The Love Languages. Why is the love languages so important for? Is because remember I mentioned that, the love may be up here or the feelings are right up here before you get married, or at the beginning of marriage. But then what happens is it comes down a little bit. But of course, again, we're not saying that your marriage is that's it, there's no love anymore. No, now it's up to you. It's up to you to keep the love going. A lot of people think love or romance and these things, it's just an automatic thing that just happens. It's not. It's down to you. Depending on what you do in the relationship, right? The marriage has its ups, its downs. Likewise, if you do something silly or if you, upset your partner, then don't expect the love to be up here now. It's going to come down a little bit, right? There's going to be ups and downs. It's up to you, right, to decide. It's in your hands, actually. A lot of people just leave it and think it's just going to, magically be there. No, it's up to you, right? So that's why the love languages are so important, the 5 love languages, because his argument is that the same way we speak literal languages to each other, like imagine you have a husband and wife, they get married, okay, and the husband, he speaks Spanish or Italian or French, okay, and the wife who he's married, she doesn't speak any of those languages, she speaks Malay or Mandarin or something, right? Imagine she speaks a completely different language, right? And they're married, and they live the rest of their life speaking to each other in their own language. They don't understand what each other is saying. They're sharing concerns. They're sharing how their day went, and they're just like nodding along. There's no communication. It's just not working, okay? But likewise, his argument is that the same way we speak literal languages and, the same way that we have to communicate each other using the same language or a language that we understand, he says that we also have a love language. Each one of us has a love language, and a lot of times the love language is different to each other. So sometimes you're speaking a love language to your spouse and they're not understanding it, meaning that they don't feel love even though you think you're making an effort because you haven't understood what their love language is. As an example, one of the love languages is words of affirmation. So imagine your partner, their love language is words of affirmation, meaning that, let's say a guy, he marries, he sees his wife one day, she wears a new dress or something at home. And when she wears it, her expectation is she wants a compliment. Now this guy, miskeen, he doesn't know what's going on, right? He's just like, okay, yeah, cool, right? Because maybe he hasn't understood that's her love language. He thinks, okay, her love language is another one, which is gifts, giving gifts. That's another love language. So he buys her a gift. Now she appreciates the gift. She appreciates it. But that's not her primary love language. It's not her primary love language. So what she wants is when she wears the dress, he says, MashaAllah, you look really good. Right? I don't know what you guys say here, I'm just saying UK-wise, we're not very good with especially guys, we're not very good with expression. But I always say to the brothers, even though guys, we're known for, or men are usually known for not being very expressive, but in marriage, you can't use that excuse anymore. Like with your boys, if you're with your boys, right? And one of your friends is wearing nice clothes, we find it awkward. I think among sisters, maybe it's different. If you see your friend wearing something nice, it's very easy for you to compliment each other. For guys, we find it awkward, nah, I can't compliment the pink jumper this brother's wearing, you know what I mean? That's awkward. So we have our own ways of complimenting each other. But when you're married, you can't do that. You can't, you gotta be expressive, right? You gotta be expressive in the way that you see and you say, MashaAllah, that's amazing. You look really good, you look beautiful, you're the most beautiful woman in the world, whatever you have to say, okay? So that's what she wants. Or, she's made you something and it tastes good and she wants to hear now you express that, not just to eat it and put it away. And in your head, you're thinking, the fact that I've eaten it and I finished it, she must know that I enjoyed the food. No. She wants to hear it from you. That's her primary love language. Does that make sense? There's other love languages like acts of service and so on, right? So understand what each other's love language is. Then what he talks about, Dr. Gary Chapman, is he talks about love tanks. You have a car and after time, when the fuel is about to finish, the tank, right? The fuel tank is emptied, right? So what do? You have to fill it again. Make sense? Likewise, he says that everyone has a love tank, or every marriage has a love tank. And after some time, what happens is the tank begins to empty. Let's say a few weeks have gone by. You're both working, you barely see each other, you barely get time for each other. Maybe in the evenings you manage to have, the tank is emptying over time. And what you need to do is you need to do something different and fill the love tank again. So it might be that dinner date. It might be just spending some time together. It might be just having a conversation. Whatever it is, you figure out and you fill the love tank again. So these are some practical ways when you are married that it's not going to come automatically. It's not just, romance isn't just a thing that happens. It's up to you. You make the effort, and then that will maintain the love, okay? And what was the second book? What I Wish I Knew Before We Got Married. In that, he talks about, the last point here, he says, one of the things he says, I wish I knew before I got married, was that there are different stages to love. There are different stages to love, right? Love is not just a one stage thing. There's different stages. When you get married, you have the first stage of love, right? Which is, you settle into the marriage, you spend time together, you get to know each other, and then that's kind of like the end of stage one. And then you enter the next stage of your marriage. Once you're comfortable with each other, once you know each other, next stage. And maybe if you have children, that's another stage of your marriage. It's another dynamic of your relationship, right? And out of interest, by the way, how long do you think the first stage of love that he mentions, this is research-based, by the way, how long do you think that stage lasts for in a marriage, on average? Not every marriage is the same, but on average, the maximum, not the minimum, the maximum, how long do you think it lasts for? The maximum? 40 days. Yeah, come on, man. Have some. 6 months? Sorry? 2 to 3 years? 2 years? 3 months? Anyone else? Right? So we're getting a range here, from a few months to a few years. So the maximum, actually, based on research, is 2 years. That's the first stage. That's the first stage of love in marriage. Yeah? 2 years. That's the maximum. We said it could be for some people 1 and a bit years, 1.5 years maybe, but 2 years is the max. Okay, that's the first stage. Why? Because that's the settling in, and you've got to know each other, and you've experienced things together. Now you're entering the next phase. And by the way, separate research shows that in newly married couples, where most of the problems begin to occur, and where even arguments and all of these things, and even divorces where they happen, is actually where? In the 2-year mark. It's a very critical stage of a person's marriage, because the feelings that we spoke about and all of the new things, like you're now at a stage where it's coming to a lower point, and you're busy, and life gets in the way and so on. So remember what I said about making the active effort in your relationship. If you don't do that, which a lot of couples don't do, they back off, and they think it's just going to continue automatically. This is where around the 2-year mark or before the 2-year mark where problems start to occur. If you can get through that, then inshallah you can continue. But a lot of people, they struggle in this stage, moving on to the next stage of their marriage. So it's just everything I mentioned before. If you do those things, then inshallah you can get through that stage, But again, it's just all about expectation. So as I was saying before, when you're getting to know someone, there's an extreme. One extreme is that you don't speak to them, you don't communicate. And now there's another extreme, which is as follows. This is just like a tweet that I took a screenshot of and I'm sharing with you. It's Ustad Abdul Rahman Murphy from the US. And he basically says that, look, my categorical advice to any two individuals who wish to marry each other, if you're serious, you want to marry someone, he says, don't date. Don't date. Because he says the stress of doing what's outside of what's good for your soul will eventually cause issues in your relationship, and it will drain it from the blessings that you could have had, right? Now, let's focus on the first part. What he's saying is that if you're sincere about getting married, then he's saying basically don't date, right? And this is, I would say, the other extreme, on the other side, where even as Muslims, we think that this is the solution to getting to know someone and marrying them. This is the only way you can get to know someone is through dating. And what is dating? Dating is, a person, a guy and a girl, they're hanging out together, they're going out together, And really, when you think of dating, and by the way, again, like Western research has shown, academic research, not Muslims, right? Non-Muslims have said that dating is a very ineffective way of, if your goal is marriage, basically, then it's a very ineffective way of figuring out if this person is the right person, if you're compatible with this person. But if your intention of dating, right, is just whatever, getting to know someone, having a bit of fun, of course, that's what you achieve from dating. But none of us here want that. We're serious about, we want to enter into a committed relationship. We want to get married to someone. And dating is not the way. But we're made to think it's the way. Why? Because of the time that we're living in now and the fact that this thing has become so accepted, so widely accepted and so widespread that it's almost like, people point the finger at us Muslims saying, you guys don't date, like, that's weird. Like, how can you marry someone without dating them and going out with them and getting to know them on such a personal level? How can you make the decision to marry someone? It's seen, we feel alienated and we feel like we're the weird ones. When actually, the simple answer to that is, hold on a second, putting the Islamic stuff aside, again, like, just the logical answer to what they're saying is, well, how did people get married up until like 20 years ago? Globally, universally, in the West, everywhere else. How did people get married? Do you think people were dating 20 years ago? In fact, and I always give the example, even back in the UK, I say England, right? In England, if you just go back 30, 40 years, which is less than 2 generations, go back 30, 40 years, right? And observe what England was like back then. I mean, firstly, it was a Christian country. We don't consider, the UK is not a Christian country anymore. It's a secular state, right? Canada, is it still a Christian country? Yes or no? Do you think? Right? Even America, like, it's becoming more and more secular as the days go by, right? So even England, once upon a time, it was actually, people took religion seriously, right? They would actually follow religion, scripture, tradition, family, like it was a big thing. So even in England, if you go back 30, 40 years ago, go back to the 70s, the 80s, right? It would have been strange for a guy and a girl to go out alone together, without a chaperone, if they're looking to get married. This would have been, even families would not have been accepting of this thing, right? There would have been a chaperone involved in the process. There would have been families involved. Like, people took marriage seriously and these things seriously, right? people did this up until 20, 30 years ago, and it was the norm. And people got married this way, and people had long-lasting marriages this way. But now, we're led to believe, that dating is the only solution, because that's what everybody does. Since especially the early 2000s, right, for the last couple of decades, this is the norm. And especially in the last decade, now it's not even in person, it's like digital, the apps, dating, like this is the norm now. You can communicate with someone from a different state, the other side of the world. This is the norm, right? And what I always say, even like dating, the reason why the research shows it's ineffective is because when you break it down, right, you have two people who are essentially like, when you go out on a date, you're wearing your best clothes, right? And when you're speaking to this person, you're really weighing what you're saying. Like you want to impress them, right? And you're engaging in like small talk, and you're going to a nice place, a nice dinner, a nice activity, right? This is all really, when you think about it, it's fake, because that person doesn't always dress like this. The person doesn't always speak like this. The person is not always going to be in this kind of context, but you're in the best situation, right? And you think that you're getting somewhere with them by going on this date and this date and this date, when you're not really getting anywhere, right? Whereas in Islam, there is, of course, going to be a balance here, where you can still speak to someone and communicate with them and see them, right? But it's not going to be to that extent, right? It's not going to be to that extent. It's going to be, there's going to be some kind of, like measures in place, right? There's going to be some, to protect you, by the way, because I've heard some people say, oh, Islam is too strict and it restricts me too much. I want to have like a bit of freedom with this. But the point is like, that's not the point, For you to get to know someone to that level, right? That's not what marriage is about. Marriage is about understanding, okay, this person, you can figure out through wherever meetings and conversations, everything about this person in terms of the things you need to know, the things that are important, right? Things that are important about this person in terms of their character, their background. You're going to involve other people. You're vetting this person. You speak to them. Do you like this person? Are you attracted? All of this you can get without having to go to that extreme. And we're going to talk about the practical side of this, right? But it's more than possible, and this is not even more than possible. It's been done. It's been done for centuries, right? And till this day, people are doing it, right? And people are having longer-lasting marriages. Actually, the statistics show that those people who do it this way, they have longer lasting marriages. Because why? They focus on the right things. They did the correct research, let's say, before they decided to commit themselves to this person, as opposed to just having a bit of fun beforehand, right? And we actually live in such an extreme now that this is really what it is. Like people, we've lost this sense of tawakkul. Like tawakkul is all about doing your research, doing everything you can, and then making a decision. You pray to Allah, and then you make a decision. And we're losing that sense. People are naturally, scared and anxious of getting married, right? It's a big step. It's a big step to take, right? But it's like, it's like we've gone to the extreme of we want to find everything out about this person. We want the 100% guarantee that this marriage is going to work. I want to know everything about this person, every single thing from A to Z, right? And then only then will I consider marrying this person. Years go by, and then finally you make the decision. That's not how it should be. Right? It doesn't need to be to that level, right? And I always give this example, for those of you who follow, or even if you don't follow, we call in England, we call it football, yeah? You know football? Yeah? Okay. So you call it here soccer, right? Anyway, we're not going to get into that, right? We keep the peace between us, inshallah. We'll accept. So one of the most famous football players in the entire world, what name comes to your mind? What name comes here? The most famous, iconic, current, yeah, Ronaldo. Do you know Cristiano Ronaldo? Do you know him? Even if you don't follow football, you know this name, yeah? Everybody knows this name. He's like a global icon, basically, okay? I want to use his example, actually. So imagine we're talking, this guy is the most famous, football player on the planet, global icon. Right now, where is he playing, by the way? Do anyone know? He's in Saudi Arabia, okay? So I think he's been there for a few years. He's been in Saudi Arabia. He makes a lot of money, let's just put it that way, okay? Every time he breathes, he makes $1 million, probably. Right? That's basically how much money he's making, okay? Very well paid. So imagine he's got that much money, okay? A man as successful as him, let's zoom into his personal life, okay? Just bear with me on this. Zoom into his personal life, okay? Let's look at his relationship, right? He has a partner, and by the way, this is not me being like nosy, like me, looking into his life. There's actually a documentary that was done about him very recently, a few months ago. and there were articles written. So I haven't watched the documentary, but I read the article about him and his family. So this man, Cristiano Ronaldo, he's been with his partner. Her name is Georgina. He's been with her for more than 9 years. So almost 1 decade is a long time to be with someone, right? But the funny thing is they're not married. They're not married. They're just together. They've been together for almost 10 years, okay? And to give you further context, him and Georgina, they have 2 children from this marriage, and him from not marriage, but from this relationship, and he was with someone else before, and he had 3 children from that relationship. So they also live with them. So she has basically 3 stepchildren and 2 children, so 5 children in total they live together with. And obviously now they're in Saudi. Before Saudi, they were in England. He played in England, yeah? And then before that, he was in Italy, I think, and Spain. So basically, in the last 10 years, they've been together. Like, they've been in Europe, they've been in England, now they've moved to Saudi. They have 5 children. They make millions and millions and millions, okay? But they're not married. It's ajib. So they actually, in the documentary, they asked the question. They asked her, what's her name, Georgina. They asked her, why are you not married for? You've been with this guy 10 years, all this time, and everything you've done together, this whole life you have, very successful, why are you not married for? So she gave you could say, like a response that you would expect, actually. And she said, no, I'm ready. I'm waiting for him to ask the question. She said, I'm ready, right? Then they asked him, they asked Cristiano Ronaldo, they said, why are you not married for? And listen to his answer very carefully. Listen to this, right? He said, no, we're going to get married. He said, it could be this year, it could be next year, it could be in the future. But listen what he said. He said, but we haven't felt the click yet. He said, we haven't felt the click. 10 years later, he's saying, we haven't felt the click. When I read this, I was like, subhanallah, this is ajib, this is very strange. Like, you're in that much time together. You have children. You've moved from country to country, continent to continent. You have all this money and all of this stuff, and you haven't felt the click. What does that even mean? What does that even mean? I don't know, right? But the point is, of course, for me, this is an extreme example that I'm giving you of a real example, right, of someone who has basically everything in this life, but still hasn't felt a click with their partner. This is really, on a, of course, much smaller scale, what actually we're being affected by, even as Muslims. We're waiting for, I don't know what, a click or something before we decide, okay, I'm going to marry this person. So like I said, we're not saying you rush into it and you don't do any research and you marry someone. At the same time, we're not saying go and wait and all of these years go by and then but there must be something, a middle ground here, which is what we want to speak about, right? Which is, of course, that you're going to take the necessary steps to get to know someone. This is what we're going to come to, right? So, is this still working? Yeah, this. So, there's going to be a number of things that we have to think about when you find someone, when you're considering marrying them. Okay, there's going to be many things like, how do I get to know them? Okay, what kind of questions do I ask? What kind of research do I do? Okay, what should I be looking out for? Nowadays, they call it red flags, green flags, all of these things, okay? So, the number one problem that I've found when I've spoken to people who are getting married or people who are considering marriage, okay? One of the first issues that I find is that they themselves are really confused. What do I mean by that? I mean that when you ask them what they're looking for, they don't even know. So if you don't know what you're looking for, and then let's say you're speaking to someone now for marriage, okay? And, you're going to ask them a question. What are you going to ask them? If you don't even know what you want from marriage, you have no idea what you're doing. And, okay, sister, what's your favorite color? Oh, it's pink. Okay, mashallah. Mine is gold. Okay. What's your favorite dish? Oh, mashallah, it's shawarma. Okay, mine is biryani. Okay. What's your favorite holiday destination? Oh, mashallah, yours is the Maldives. Oh, mine is Dubai. These are the real conversations that people are having for marriage. I'm not even joking. I'm not making this up. People ask these questions, and then this is the kind of conversations they have, and it goes on and on and on and on. And then after some time, they come and they say, "Oh, but I can't. We're not getting anywhere." Of course, you're not getting anywhere because you don't know what you're doing. You're not asking the right questions. You want to find out about this person, right? Okay. So ask the proper question. All of these things that you're talking about, you can find this out later. Inshallah, you get married, all of these things you're going to find out, and more. Trust me, okay? But that's not important right now, okay? Yeah, is there supposed to be some level of chemistry? Definitely, right? In fact, they say that there should be 3 C's. Before you get married, 3 C's that you have, okay? Number 1 is compatibility, right? And by the way, you know, we said that more important than love and attraction, these things, the most important thing that everybody is in agreement on that you need to have before you get married is compatibility. That's the first thing. You have to have compatibility with this person. And we'll talk about what is compatibility, right? Because you have to be compatible in different areas or some areas. If you have compatibility in these areas, this is a huge thing. It's a huge plus point. It means you're ready for the next stage. But if you're not compatible in these areas, then you know, okay, there's no point moving forward. Compatibility is the biggest thing, right? Because, you know, the love or the looks and the attraction, over time, that can fade. But compatibility is the core thing that holds you together. So even if it fades, there's bigger things. There's something stronger that is your foundation for marriage, as opposed to something weak like attraction or something like this. Make sense, right? So the first C is you have to have compatibility. That's like, you know, the biggest thing, okay? And the second C is chemistry. There has to be some chemistry as well. And by chemistry, I mean all of the things that I just mentioned, like the attraction. You know, you get along. You know, you're not like 2 completely different people. You know, there's some people maybe, have you ever met someone in your life, like, I don't know, anyone, who you've met them and you just don't get along? Have you met someone like this? You're just 2 different people. Nothing wrong with the person, nothing wrong with you. It's not like you dislike them or anything. It's just you're just 2 very different people. So if you were to go out together and have a dinner together, it would be probably a very awkward dinner. You probably have nothing in common, nothing to talk about. You just be sat there. How are you? Alhamdulillah, khair, alhamdulillah. How are you? Alhamdulillah. You just keep repeating the same question. How's family? Alhamdulillah. How's work? Alhamdulillah. That's the most probably, you have to have some chemistry. Some things in common, yes. Doesn't mean that everything you have to tick the box. Okay, so compatibility, most important. Chemistry, also important, but less important than the first. And then the third is once you have the compatibility and the chemistry, you have to have the third C, which is commitment. You have to have the commitment to each other that, okay, now we've fulfilled the first 2, now we're ready for this level of commitment, which is now, you know, because even some people, they might have compatibility, chemistry, but maybe they're not willing to or ready to commit, right? So you have to be willing to commit now, and that's where you can get the marriage, right? Inshallah, a successful marriage, okay? So those are the few areas. Now, what was I saying? I was saying that these are the things that you need to consider when you're speaking to them, right? So if you know what you want, for example, again, real life example, I spoke to a brother once and I asked him, what are you looking for? When you're getting married, or you want to get married, what are you looking for? And he said to me, I'm looking for a practicing sister. So I said to him, okay, mashallah, that's great. I said to him, define for me what is a practicing sister now. And he was like, he doesn't know. He doesn't know how to define that. Because you know, there's some words that we've just heard, some terms that we just say. We just say, oh, practicing. I'm looking for a practicing brother, practicing sister. We have no clue what that means. Because I tell you something, there are some people who, for them, practicing means, I don't know, someone who prays 5 times salah, 5 times a day or something. For other people, practicing means this person is like memorizing Quran and studying and, you know, I don't know what that means to you, to different people, based on also your level. Practicing means something, right? So figure it out, know what that means. So I said to him, what does that mean? Then he had to figure out, okay, this is actually, more specifically, this is what I'm looking for. In terms of deen, in terms of family, in terms of this, you need to know a basic idea, or what we call a criteria of what you're looking for. Also, I would add to that, not only what you're looking for, but also what you're not looking for. This is called, some people call it a deal breaker. So there are a few things that are deal breakers for you that, you know, if you're not ticking this box, or this thing I definitely don't want, then, you know, we're not going to proceed. So have a few of this, like at least know if there's some things for you that are really important. And again, I can't define for you what that is. Let's say for one person, like deen, so more specifically, I know some people who have said, okay, I want to marry someone who's like, at the minimum, they are praying 5 times a day, and you know, they're doing X, Y, Z. Like that's the minimum criteria for me. Anything less than that, I don't think is the right level. Fine. If that's your criteria, who's to say anything, right? That's your criteria. Fine. It's up to you. Other people have different things in their criteria, not just deen, but in terms of background. Some people want a certain criteria in terms of you know, the person in terms of, you know, what they're doing, job-wise, career-wise. People have different criteria. I can't tell you if it's right or wrong. It's your criteria. It's fine, right? Of course, the more things you add to your criteria, the more difficult it becomes, naturally, right? If you add 10 things to your criteria, and these are very important things, then that means you have to find someone with all 10. It's going to be, your pool becomes smaller and smaller, right? But you have the main things. List the main things. And then have a few extra things that are like, you know, not necessary, not the most important, but, you know, ideal or preferred. That's a better way of doing something, okay? So the first thing is, what was it? Know what you want and what you don't want. Know what you're looking for when you go into this, right? Then, inshallah, you're on the right line, okay? This is a great starting point. And then once you know, then based on this, you're going to ask your questions. Now that you know, you're going to ask questions. Now you're not going to sit there and be wasting time with this person, right? Now you can get to it. Okay, this is what I know what I want, so ask the questions. But again, asking questions, big mistake people make. One of the biggest mistakes they make is, again, they don't know how to ask questions. They ask, for example, yes or no questions. So they say, so do you pray salah? Yes. Are you a good Muslim? Yes. Right? Who's going to say no? Right? To that. Who's going to answer no? If you ask someone, are you a bad person? Who's going to say, no, sister, actually, you know what? I don't think you should marry me. I'm a really bad guy. I have a lot of work to do. Who's going to say that? They're going to say, yeah, of course, mashallah, I'm a good person. So you're limiting yourself. You have to ask open questions. Because you're having a conversation. You want to figure out, you want to see who this person really is. If you ask closed questions, as they call it, you're not going to see. You're just going to say yes, no, yes, no. But if you ask an open question, you're going to find out, learn a lot more about this person. Correct? Right? And not only this, but you should frame the question based on what you're looking for, give scenarios, all of these things. Because again, you don't know what this person's truly like. But if you're clever enough, right, you can ask questions in a way, and you can see based on the answers they're giving, if they're honest, right, if they're being genuine, if they're really thinking things through, or are they just giving, you know, nowadays we call it, you know, and I just saw something the other day, which actually is a real story, about ChatGPT. That there was a guy, actually, he was, or I think it was a sister who was, no, it was a guy who was messaging. And this is why you shouldn't be messaging. Like, when you're having a serious conversation with someone for marriage, people nowadays, they send WhatsApp messages. I mean, how are you learning about this person through a message? Do you understand what I'm saying? People, they send message, and nowadays people don't even send message, they just send a emoji or something. And you think, wow, I'm learning so much about this person. Right? So the situation was that this brother was messaging someone and getting to know them for marriage. And the person was using ChatGPT to respond. Can you imagine this? They're using AI to respond nowadays, right? So he's asking a question about what does the future look like, blah, blah, blah. And this person's putting the prompt in, right? How would I respond to a guy who I'm interested in marrying, who's asking me about da-da-da, and then sending this response, and he's there reading the message saying, wow, mashallah, the sister's, she's on point, right, you know? And then the family, I think one of the family members was reading and said, something's not right about these responses. Something robotic about it, right? And then they found out it was ChatGPT. Because, you know, if you put a similar prompt in, you know, sometimes you can get similar answers. This is a real story, real life story, okay? So, messaging, seriously, you're going to ask a question, and you want to see this person, right? And see what they say. So, let me give you another real life example. A few years ago, there was a guy getting married, and he said to me that, again, like he had a criteria about religion and deen and so on, right? And he said that, look, for me it's important about salah and these things, okay? I want to marry someone who's praying salah, etc. So I said, okay, fine. You know, same advice. Don't go and say, do you pray? You know, you want to see if they actually pray, or if prayer is like a priority for them. So I said, look, ask the following. I said, you know, this person was working at the time, they were working full time, and they used to go to the office and come back and so on. So I said, okay, when you go, use the context and say to them, so I know, mashallah, you work full time, and you know, you spend long hours in the office, the whole day in the office. Naturally, what happens when you're in the office, of course, salah time will come. So the question was like framed in this way, and then they were asked, okay, so how do you prioritize prayer, and how do you manage to fit prayer into your busy schedule? Do you see now? Now this person, it's not like a generic response they're going to give. Now they have to think, because you have given an actual scenario based on their life. So now they're going to say. So I said to the person, look, there's probably going to be 3 outcomes from this question. The answer will be based on 3 outcomes. I said, number 1, they could potentially say the following. They could say that, yeah, you're right. I do work full time and it is really busy. But when I first took on the job, this was very important for me, salah, and I mentioned it to my manager, and I made sure that I have my own room, or somewhere in the office where I can pray, and during my breaks and during my lunch hours, I managed to go and pray and fit in my salah. So I said, if they say something along these lines, then you learn about them that prayer is a priority for them, despite them working and commitments and so on. And I said, number 2, they could say, for example, that, yeah, you're right, I do go to the office and things, but it's a little bit awkward, or, it's too busy at work for me to pray. So when I get home, I do qada, I make up for my prayers and I pray when I get home. So I said, that tells you that this person does pray, but prayer is not the priority for them, work takes precedence. And then I said the third scenario is they could be honest and say to you, actually, you're asking about salah, you're asking about prayer at work. If I'm honest with you, salah, I'm still working on it. I'm still trying, every now and again I try to pray, or I'm still trying to get there. So you learn from this person that, based on your criteria, they're not praying salah. Make sense? So it turned out, alhamdulillah, that it was number 1. The answer they gave was very, they prioritized prayer, and this was a big thing for them. But do you see how the question, you framed it and you're learning about this person? These are the types of questions. Now, whether it's about salah or deen, whether it's about family or future, compatibility, the main areas are as follows, okay? That you want to be compatible with the person in terms of, firstly, of course, in terms of, let's say, you want to have similar, let's say, values, similar things you want in life, yeah? For example, again, a real case where there was 2 people, they wanted to get married. One of them, wanted to have their own family, children. It's a big thing for them. They wanted to have, 2, 3, 4 children, right? And this other person, they had no interest in having children. For them, marriage was, just get married, live our life together, continue working, career. That was a big thing for them. And they had a discussion, initially, but the mistake that the person made who wanted to have children, the mistake they made is they accepted. They kind of compromised, and they said, okay, we'll figure it out after we get married. But this is a big thing. Something like this is a massive life thing. It tells you a lot about what you're. So when they accepted that, what happened naturally, after a few years, after getting married, what happened? The person who wanted to have children now, is bringing it up, saying, we want to have, this is something important to me, children, family, and so on. And the other person said, no, not now. And this is how things went by. And they realized very quickly that actually, I'm not going to get what I wanted. And, when we weren't, in other words, we weren't compatible to begin with. Is the thing, right? Because in terms of what they wanted in life and future, they didn't receive this. So again, just to make it a bit easier, by the way, actually I'll come back to that point, but compatibility in terms of your values, compatibility in terms of future, compatibility in terms of even deen, religion is very important, right? You want to be on a similar kind of wavelength when it comes to religion, right? You want to be compatible, sometimes family is very important, compatible in terms of your families, right? And so on. So these are the main areas of compatibility, right? You want to have a level of compatibility. So that takes precedence. And then, of course, the other things like, the conversations you've had, how you feel towards them, attraction, these things are important. Even the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned in hadith that one of the reasons why you would get married is for a person's jamal, for their beauty, for their attraction. It's something you factor in. But it's one reason. It's not, he didn't say that's the main. The main reason, he said, is deen, right? The main 2 reasons, in fact, in another hadith, the Prophet said that if a person comes to you and they have their 2 things are pleasing to you, their deen and their khuluq, their deen, their sense of religious commitment, and their khuluq, their character, then you should marry this person. These are the 2 most important things a person would have, right? Deen, religious commitment, and their character. Because I always say, when it comes to character, character is what? Is the way that person treats you, the way a person makes you feel. Character is so many things. I'll give you examples at the end, right? But ultimately, you want to marry someone of character. Why? Even if the, I don't know, the attraction isn't as high, it's a good amount, okay? But the character is really good. That's way more important, because over time, when you're married to someone, you're living with them day to day, you want them to treat you well. You want them to respect you. You want them to be nice to you, kind to you. When Khadija radiallahu anha, when she wished to marry the Prophet ﷺ, right? What were the qualities that stood out to her the most in the Prophet ﷺ? It was the fact that the Prophet was what? He was honest. He was a sadiq al-amin, right? He was a trustworthy person, a person of integrity, a good person. Previously, she had been married and she had come across people who had cheated and deceived and so on. She looked at the character of the Prophet ﷺ, and he saw something similar in her. So do you see, they prioritize the character. Every time, it's going to come down to these things. How they treat you, how they make you feel. That is actually the spirit of marriage. In the Quran, in the Sunnah, the spirit of marriage is how you make the other person feel, how you are. Most of the verses, most of the hadith, they focus on being the best towards your spouse. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, خَيْرُكُمْ خَيْرُكُمْ لِأَهْلِ. The best of you are those who are best to their spouses, their family members. وَأَنَا خَيْرُكُمْ لِأَهْلِ. And I am the best of you to my family members, to my spouses, right? Being good, being kind, being caring, these things, these are the most important qualities that you want to see in this person. Makes sense, right? So, it was what? Deen and khuluq. These are the two most important things. So, the way I summarize this whole thing, right? Before we conclude and get to the end of the discussion, the way I summarize is I say that the most important areas that you want to look at when you're discussing with someone, right, are the following. And it actually should be in this order. And remember, before I gave you 3 C's, right? Now I'm going to give you 3 F's, okay? And what are they? Number 1 is faith, family, finances. And that will equal future. So the bonus one is future. You want to look at these 3 areas. Faith, family, finances. In that order. These are usually the important things. I'll break each one down, right? And then if you have those 3, then inshallah you have the 4th, the bonus, which is a future, inshallah, okay? So what is the first one? Faith, meaning what I just mentioned, religion, character, religious commitment, their deen, this is their faith, meaning that that's number 1. In fact, there's a saying that goes, right? I don't know if you've heard this before, but there's a saying that goes, that if someone comes to you and they have deen and character, give them a 1, number 1, like this, okay? And then let's say they have a good family, put a 0 next to it. Then let's say you're attracted to them, put another 0 there. Let's say they have a good job, put another 0 there. Let's say whatever, another thing, put another 0. So now you have you went from 1 to 10 to 100 to 1,000 to 10,000, whatever, okay? The zeros keep adding on. But then they say that if the person comes and they don't have deen or character, you give them a 0. And now let's say they have a really good job, put another 0 there. If they have a good family, put another 0 there. If you're attracted to them, put another 0 there. If they have this, another 0. What are you left with in the end? Just a bunch of zeros. Now I know that sounds harsh, but ultimately the lesson is that the other things look impressive, they're good to have, yeah, great, the salary and all of these things, of course they're important, nobody's saying it's not. But the priority you're missing. The priority wasn't the deen and character of this person, right? So faith is the religious commitment, and you have the character. So what is the second one? The second one was family, right? So family means, yes, the family of that person at the time. So the family dynamics, it's important. Again, young people, some young people, they think, no, when I get married, it's just me and my spouse. It's our future together, that's it. Family is not really important, right? And I think that's, again, it's a symptom of a wider thing, which is we're kind of moving away from the family structure, the unit, right? We're not spending as much time with family anymore. We're being a lot more individual about things, career comes first, my happiness comes first. We're moving away from family dynamic. I mean, subhanAllah, there was a time where, not long ago, families would have dinner together. Correct? Yeah, I remember, when I was growing up, there was no ifs or buts. It was, when we have lunch, when we have dinner, we sit on the table together and we eat as a family. Yeah? Now we've got to a point where, one person's eating, by the TV, watching Netflix. Another person eats an hour later. Another person's eating out with their friends. There's no sense of family. We're moving away from that, right? So family is important. Yeah? Family is important. You want to see what their family is like. Not just their upbringing, but their dynamics with their family, their relationship with their family members, right? Very important. Because families will be a part of your future as well, right? And family does say a lot about the person. Not all the time, but it does. But family also means in terms of what they want from family in future, right? Children and these things, right? It's very important. So family in general, number 2. And number 3, when I say finances, I mean in general, of course, it's important nowadays. Like, we have to be realistic. You can't just say, I'm going to marry a man of deen who goes to the masjid and who's a sheikh and so on, but this person is bankrupt, doesn't have a penny to their name. It's not realistic, correct? Right? So you need to have someone who also has finances, meaning, career prospects, right? A good background in terms of even, prospects or a job currently or a means to provide. And, it goes both ways as well. Like, finance is an important thing to have. It's ultimately, you're going to have to provide. You're going to have a life together. You're going to want different things from the finances, right? So these 3, if you can really get an idea of these 3, faith, family, finances, then inshallah you have the final one, which is future, right? Everything else is additional, it's a bonus. If there are other things, it's great, alhamdulillah, but these are the core things that you want to look at, right? And these are the way your conversations will be framed, inshallah, around these things. If you have these things, then you're onto the right thing, inshallah, right? And one last thing I'll say is, again, look, none of us know the future. Whenever you make a decision in life, there's no guarantee, correct? As an example, let's say some of you are studying. So before you chose the course or before you chose the university that you're studying in, you did what you could, right? But there was no guarantee that it was gonna be successful, you were gonna enjoy your time there. You don't know what the future holds, but you did what you could. Likewise, the example I always give is, like you're buying a car, you're buying a new car. When you buy a new car, how many of you would see the advert come up for the car? The commercial, the advert, okay? You see the car. You see a nice car, a car that you like, whatever, let's say it's, $10,000, okay? And how many of you would do this? Would you see the car, you say, oh, I really like this car, and you buy it there and then? Would any of you do this? No, nobody would do this. You would never buy the car just, what would you do? You would call the person, then you'd go see the owner, you'd see the car, you'd inspect the car, you'd take it for a test drive, you look at the history of the car, right? Maybe sometimes you take a friend with you to get a second opinion on the car, yeah? And then you decide to buy the car. You say, Ya Allah, bless me in this, Bismillah, and then you buy the car. Likewise, with marriage, but by the way, the same car that you did everything for, is there a guarantee that now, even after all of that, you've done it and everything looks good, is there a guarantee that the car is going to work for long term? It could break down after a few months. There's no guarantee. You don't know the outcome. You don't know the outcome, okay? What I'm trying to say is that marriage is like any life decision. You can't guarantee the outcome of marriage. You can't guarantee what the person will be or do. But don't lose your sense of tawakkul, right? You have to do everything you can before you get to that stage. And what are the steps that you take? You have to see the person. You have to see whether you like the person. You have to speak to the person, see what their character, deen is like, see the family, involve other people in the process, vet the person, do your research. If you've done these things and everything looks good, then there should be nothing holding you back except you do make dua and you say Bismillah and you marry the person. Of course, I'm really simplifying the process here for everyone. It's not as simple as that. What I'm saying is that that's how really it should be, right? Just out of interest, by the way, another question, and technically there's no right or wrong answer here, but I have a question for you. When let's say you meet someone that you are interested in marrying, that's point A. Point B is when you decide to get married. And point C is when you actually get married, yeah? Okay, now forget about point C for now. Point A to point B. You meet someone, and then you decide, you say, Bismillah, let's get married. I think it's the right decision. How long do you think you should spend between point A and point B on average? And you could tell me number of months, weeks, years, number of meetings. I don't know. The way you quantify, it's up to you. But in your head, what does that look like? 1 month? 2 months, okay? 2 months. 1 year? Okay. 2 months, okay. 3 months, sorry. Okay, 3 months, okay, good. Anyone else? What does it look like to you? No right or wrong answer. It's just whatever you think. Just say is okay. Yeah. Depends on the situation, but like an average. We're just looking at averages here. Of course, it can be situational. 3 to 6 months, okay. 3 months. Anyone think more? 12 months, okay. Anything else? Right? So everyone has an idea. You have an idea. And by the way, it's good to have an idea, because if you go into it open-ended, it's not a good idea. You should have in your mind, okay, if I'm now meeting someone or I'm speaking to someone, it's serious now, don't keep it open-ended. Because remember, like you're investing a lot of time and energy and emotion into this. Yeah, it's a serious thing. So you should have in your mind something, right? When it gets to this point and we still haven't decided, then we need to reevaluate. Not like, okay, let's see how this goes, and time is going and going, and then after that long period of time, then you decide, maybe it's not going to work out. Then you have to restart the process, and for a lot of people, it gets emotionally very draining, and it kind of puts them off getting married. So have this idea. Now, you all gave me your kind of like your thoughts and ideas, right? Let me tell you actually, based on again, it could vary, right? But on average, what it should look like. So let me start with the maximum, and then we'll talk about the average, okay? Some of you mentioned the average actually. The maximum really, again, could depend, but ideally the maximum should be 6 months. This is like the maximum actually, 6 months. Why? 6 months is, firstly, 6 months is half a year. It's a long time. I know nowadays 6 months feels like nothing, and it's true, right? We're already nearly in June. Nearly half of 2025 is gone, okay? So it goes by very quickly. But like I said, it's a big investment you're making, and you should have a cap, and the cap should be 6 months. Why? Because how many meetings can you have with this person in 6 months? How many conversations can you have in 6 months? When you think about it, quite a lot. Depending, I don't know how it's going to be. Even if you said once a week we speak or something, right? Even if you said once a week, which is quite a lot, frequency-wise, in 6 months, how many meetings is that? How many conversations? 24, right. So more than 20 meetings, conversations. That's a lot of conversations to have to find out about whether you marry this person. That's why I say that's maximum actually. 6 months you're able to make. But actually the sweet spot is like 2 to 3 months. 3 months mark, you've had a good number of meetings, conversations, you've done the research in that time, okay? Okay, sometimes you need a bit more time, you add a few more weeks, few more months, fine, no problem. But around that mark is actually what you should spend. And then if it's going above that, beyond that, then you have to reevaluate and say, okay, it's been a half a year. We've had this many conversations. What are we waiting for? Or what are we doing wrong here? What kind of things are we missing here? Right? This is where you need to reevaluate, to perhaps get other people involved in the process and or get some help in this. Or, you gotta, that's what I would say. That's my personal advice. Again, whether you take it or not is up to you. This is not a fatwa. It's not like a Islamic, ruling. I'm saying this is based on just how things go, right? Research-wise, it's up to you, of course. But I'm just saying at least have something in mind, okay? The final things, inshallah, I'm going to share with you as we conclude. Like I said, there's so many things that I want to get into. As we said, that you're going to do everything you can, and then you say, Bismillah, you make the decision, right? Remember yesterday, for those of you who came to the faith-based session, we mentioned the hadith of the two things you do before making a decision is istikhara and istishara. Yeah? So you you do istishara, which means shura, you consult. In marriage, really important thing to do. Very important that in marriage you consult. Whether it's you involve family, you involve someone of experience, because that is, it's invaluable. Like you can't put a price to it. You need that guidance. You think you know what you're doing, trust me, you need the second opinion. You need someone else to look at that person and vet the person, not just you, right? So remember this. Istikhara, again, the joke we always say, the marriage prayer, okay? Istikhara is important. But again, istikhara, remember, istikhara is a prayer, it's a dua, it's not, people have taken it to an extreme now. You have to see the dream, you have to see the feeling, you have to see the signs, okay? A few days ago when I was in Toronto, we had this similar marriage event, a similar talk in the masjid, and this one guy comes up to me afterwards, and he looks like, he's got a serious question to ask me, right? And he said, Sheikh, I've got this, recently something amazing happened, And I said, what is it? And he said, recently I've been thinking of getting married, and there's someone I'm interested in, and every time I go on my phone, on Instagram, on TikTok, I keep seeing videos about marriage and dua. And he said, is this a sign? Is this a sign? And I said, no, Habibi, that's your algorithm. Right? That's how the algorithm works. You've been watching too many videos on marriage, so now the algorithm has figured out it's going to give you more videos on marriage. And this guy, poor guy, he thinks it's a sign from Allah. Get married, bro. And I said to him, how old are you? He said, 16. I said, bro, go back to your house. Go study. Go figure your life out, bro. Way too early. This guy, he thinks this is what it is. And people fall for this. They think, oh, there's going to be a sign. Real story from UK, real life story. Let me tell you, right? That was in Toronto, so we're laughing at the Canadians. Let's laugh at the UK guys as well, okay? This guy, even worse. He's not even a kid, he's an adult, right? And he did istikhara because he's interested in marrying someone. And this person, her name was Maryam. And he did istikhara, salat istikhara. And then that night he came to the masjid, and he's praying behind the Imam, and the Imam recited Surah Maryam, right? And he is in a different world now. Allahu Akbar, it's the best salah of his life. And then after the salah, he leaves the masjid, and he's pointing to the heavens. And he said, Ya Allah, thank you. This is the sign I've been looking for my whole life. This guy, poor guy, the Imam was going to recite Surah Maryam anyway, whether he was there or not, subhanAllah, right? But what I'm saying is, the reason why it's become an extreme, I'm not saying that you can't see it. I mean, look, dreams, sign, these are not sources of Sharia, right? These are, for prophets, anbiya, dreams were revelation. For us, doesn't necessarily mean much. Now, I'm not going to say that you completely disregard all of these things. What I'm saying is, that's not the main decision, like primary reasoning for you making a decision for marriage. If you did everything, like you met the person, you've involved other people, you've done all of the things, as we mentioned, and then also you factor in like a dream you saw, or a feeling, or something, alhamdulillah, that's fine. But to take that one experience, or that one feeling, or that one dream, and to base your whole life decision on it, this is dangerous. Make sense? Right? So we're not disregarding, we're just saying, be balanced in this approach, okay? So you've done this. Now, inshallah, I'm going to end with this because, of course, we have a lot of, I do want to open up for questions, and we have to conclude as well, inshallah. But I'm going to end with this, inshallah. Just something practical for us all to walk away with. And I always end with this, and usually we have like a small workshop on this, but we don't have time. But just think about this. So what this brother is saying is really important. He's saying, when it comes to getting married, the scariest part is not really about who the other person is, but it's about who you really are, right? And when you take off those, like when you put that into perspective, that's when reality hits. Because this, as the saying goes, all of us were looking for the perfect or the ideal spouse, but how many of us are the ideal spouse or willing to become the ideal spouse? So it's great, all of us sitting here and saying, I'm looking for the practicing brother or sister. I'm looking for this person of deen. I'm looking for this person or that person. But, when you really, I know it's a really difficult thing to do, but when you actually sit down and think, am I a person of deen? Do I have good character? Like, if someone were to marry me, am I going to be a good spouse? It's actually almost like a very scary thing. It's almost like we resist, right? It's really like the nafs does not want that conversation. Why? Because naturally we assume we're good. We assume we're in a good position. But really we're not. Like, none of us are perfect. We all have work to do. And if we all think like this, by the way, it's a great sign of maturity and that you're ready for marriage. We talk about how do you know I'm ready for marriage. One of the signs is if you're really thinking about yourself and you're looking at ways to improve yourself, this is a big green flag that you're ready or more prepared to be married or get married. Because you know what? You're not just thinking about the other part. You're thinking, okay, I'm part of this, Like one of the best pieces of advice that I heard about marriage was marriage is, so like someone said that marriage is not 50-50. Whereas everyone tells you today marriage is 50-50. The best piece of advice I heard is that marriage is not 50-50. Because when you think about it, it's as if you're saying, like, the extent, your limit is 50%. You're only giving 50. What does that even mean? Like, how? No. So they said marriage is not 50-50, it's each one needs to try to give 100 each. Make sense? Each one needs to try to give 100. Now, will they give 100? That's a different question. Most likely not. But you have to try and give it your best. Imagine you go into work tomorrow, and you knock on your manager's door, your employer's door, and you say, from today, sir, or madam, or whatever, you say, from today, it's 50-50. You employ me, okay? I'm going to give 50, you give the other 50. This person will say, get out of here, like, I pay you to give 100%. You're my employee, correct. Now, of course, marriage is a different relationship dynamic, but imagine you go into marriage and you say, okay, the most I'm going to give is 50. And we half things, and this is not how marriage is. It's not even practical. You don't half things. Okay, today I've done enough now, darling. You now do the rest. Come on. Today I'm going to clean my half of the table. You clean your half now. This is my side of the bed. Don't you dare. Come on, this is not how marriage is. It's not practical. So they said each should try and give 100 each. Now, some days what's going to happen? Someday you're going to try give 100, you only give 70. Another day you might give 90. Another day, because you're busy, life gets in the way, you give 50, you give 40. But the point is that the other person will fill the other. Your spouse will fill the other half or the other percentage, because it's a teamwork, right? Marriage is not like you go into it as two individuals. That's not what marriage is. People make you believe that it's like that. Oh, this is my thing, your thing. No. You're one now. Khalas, you're a team now. And the only way it will work is if you work as a team. Everything, finances, it's a shared thing. Responsibility, shared responsibility. Family, shared. The house, you are one unit now. You don't separate here in marriage, right? That's the best piece of advice. When it comes to this, you have to think now, okay, am I good enough, right? Am I a good person? And it's a very good exercise to do. And I want all of you to actually try and go away and think of this, right? It takes a lot of work. Sometimes you need to really sit, and not just once, like one time you sit. No, it's like a repeated process of muhasaba, of taking yourself to account, of thinking. And by the way, the best way to do this is like people do journaling nowadays. They write things down, or they take a mental note, or you get some time to yourself, right? Nobody gets the time to themselves nowadays. Like most likely, by the way, I've been talking for way too long. And to be honest, it's not even practical. I've been talking for too long. And mashallah, you guys are sat here. Our teachers, by the way, they used to say to us, mashallah, the sheikh is giving the lecture. We're sat in the classroom, and he's teaching us hadith, or he's teaching us, seerah, or whatever, okay? He's teaching us this thing. And then sometimes he would turn around and say to us, mashallah, you guys, are you Imam Bukhari? You sat there, Imam Bukhari, it said that he had like such memory that whatever the teacher said, the sheikh said, the whole day, he would go and repeat everything. Like he just memorized it. So he would tease us and say, mashallah, you all Imam Bukhari, you sat there listening. Where you're not taking no notes, nothing, no writing, nothing. You think, so he would tease us and say, mashallah, you guys think, you know. Because honestly, I've been speaking for so long, yeah, maybe you've learned a few things, right? But this is life. Like, we go through so many things in life, we never sit down and think. Like, okay, today I sat in this lecture, what kind of things did I take away? We don't do this. We just go back and say, okay, I attended a lecture today. I heard the khutbah today. I sat in a class today, or I had these interactions today. You only learn when you reflect and when you note things down, and when you, then you improve the next time. Or you get a mentor, you get a teacher, and that person tells you, and they guide you, and they help you, and they point things out for you. These are the ways that you do this, right? So if you do this exercise and you think, right, and this is the last slide, the next one here, which is, again, just some examples, okay? Like on one hand, you have what we call the positive qualities. On the other hand, you have negative traits. Some examples. Now, I'm not saying, by the way, that everyone has these. That's not the point of the exercise. The point of the exercise is I've given examples, and I want you to identify, okay, do you have one or two of these positive qualities? Do you have maybe one or two of these negative traits? Not all of them, right? which one falls more in line with you? So the negative traits, for example, if you find that you find yourself to be someone who's, I don't know, like generally you think you're quite a selfish person. I don't know, it's a difficult conversation to have with yourself, but you come to the conclusion that I'm quite a selfish person. Or let's say a really common one that I find with people is that some people are very stubborn, so meaning that they learn about themselves, that they find it very difficult to admit when they have done something wrong. So when you have a disagreement with someone, think about a time where you last had a disagreement with someone, and were you someone who was willing to accept that you did something wrong? Or were you the person who was like, no, I'm going to be stubborn, I'm not going to apologize, even if I was wrong, I'm going to find a way to argue and whatever. Is that you? Does that sound like you? If that sounds like you, then that means you have to work on this. Because when you get married, you're going to have lots of disagreements, naturally. And imagine if you're always stubborn and you never apologize. That's not going to go down well. So you want to identify this from now. Many examples I can give you about impatience, like we spoke about patience yesterday, impatience and so on, hastiness, okay? But likewise, the positives, what do you find positive about yourself? Do you think you're quite generous, quite caring? Do you think you're well-mannered? Or do you think you can work on your manners, right? When you're in a restaurant and a person comes and they serve you, the waiter, the waitress, whoever, okay? How do you speak to them? How do you communicate with them? Versus when you communicate with your Imam or you communicate with your employer, someone above you. Is there consistency or do you find inconsistency? Do you find that when you speak to someone who's below, all right, of course we're not disrespecting anyone, but you're speaking to a cleaner, or you're speaking to the waiter, waitress, do you find that you're quite rude and abrupt with them, but with other people you're, mashallah, you're nice? That means you're inconsistent. You need to work on this, right? Because again, this is an important quality to have. So just some examples. You can take a picture of this, go back and think about this, and which qualities, if you have positive qualities, alhamdulillah, try to develop these qualities. If you have negative qualities or some of them, see if you can identify before you get married. Try to work. Nobody's going to be perfect before marriage, but at least you're a work in progress as opposed to being someone who's oblivious. You wait until marriage, until your spouse points to you, hey, by the way, you're quite a selfish person, or hey, by the way, you're quite a stubborn person. And you say, huh? You've never learned that. And now someone is pointing it out to you. You're going to get into defensive mode. No, I'm not. No. And then this is how arguments happen. You've got to take ownership, accountability. It's the best way. And you take that into marriage. It's honestly, you do work on yourself. It will do you, inshallah, wonders when you get married. So, we end with this, right? Before you start planning your ideal wedding, start planning your ideal marriage. Yeah? This is it, really. Wedding, you can have, inshallah, have a nice wedding, no problem. Celebrate, enjoy yourself, inshallah, okay? No problem. But imagine people invest time and money, a lot of money, right? And energy into what? The wedding, which is great. It's a few hours, though. It's a day, halas, right? But your marriage, your future is what you want to invest in. That's the most important thing. That's what you want to invest in the most. And I think if we can invest in that, through these kind of things, self-accountability, reading books even though, by the way, I don't believe that you can read a book and become ready for marriage. I'm just saying that this is one potential thing that can help you, right? Different perspectives. Speak to people who are married, get their advice, right? This is investing in your marriage. Some premarital counseling, whatever it might, these things are good, right? Things that we usually sideline, these are things that are working towards your marriage, even if you haven't even found someone, or if you have found someone good, work on that. That's the most important because you have a future together, inshallah. So with that, forgive me again. I've said a lot of things. If I've spoken out of line, forgive me. If I've not been clear, forgive me. I hope some of this has been useful, inshallah, and beneficial. I pray that, for those of you who are not married, we pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants you righteous, suitable spouses. And for those who are married here, we pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues to bless your marriages. And we pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us an understanding. Inshallah, with that being said, we can conclude with, if there are a few questions, I don't want to take too much more time. I know Maghrib is approaching soon as well. So if there are a few questions we can take related to marriage, and then we will conclude, inshallah. So feel free to ask. There's one question here. If there's any from the sisters we can take, we'll start from this side, inshallah. Yes, akhi, alaikum salam. Alhamdulillah, khair. How are you? You okay? Alhamdulillah.
My question is, do you think, I mean, I don't know how to ask it exactly, but when do you think is the best time to approach the parents of the potential? And yeah, so the question is, when is the best time to approach the parents of the potential? And one ayah from Surah An-Nisa is, it says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وعاشروهن بالمعروف. So I sometimes listen to this surah in the car, and I think it is the law of like between the zawj and zawja. So I would recommend the brothers here or the sisters if they can listen to it. I always listen to it, and I think I learn something new every time I do listen. Yeah, that's my question.
It's an amazing ayah. It's an amazing ayah. Jazakallah khair. وَعَاشِرُوهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. And you're right. It basically summarizes, you know how I said before, when you look in the Quran and Sunnah, you will find that you look at the spirit of marriage. Most of the time we look at the law of marriage, which is good. You should know the law, the rights and so on. But remember, there's something called legality versus reality. The legal side, great. You should know your law and the rights and so on. But it's like you know the law of this country, yeah? And do you walk around every day with the law book out and that's not, you live your life and you use your common sense, right? That's the main thing. Likewise in marriage, you don't walk around with the law book and say, today you're my wife, you have to do this, I'm your husband, I have to do this. You use your common sense, you're a person of deen, you have fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you treat each other well. That's the reality on the ground of marriage, that's how things work. So وَعَاشِرُهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ means accompany them and be with them. Mu'ashara, right? Be with them. Bil ma'ruf, by the way, has many interpretations. One of the interpretations of bil ma'ruf is kindness. Be with them in kindness. Another interpretation of ma'ruf, it comes from the word urf, which means customary. What is customary? Like, you know how we said, like common sense, custom, like what people understand to be good, you know, like that's what you do. Islam doesn't need to tell you, this is how you treat someone. Would you find that, like, even in hadith, like, do you find specifically the Prophet said, this is how you should be with someone? He gave general guidelines, yeah? Even in marriage, you have general guidelines, but the Prophet is not going to say, okay, when you get married on the first day, and then, oh yeah, we don't have these guidelines. We just got to use custom, common sense, what people do, what you see, like Islam, deen, like these are the generic things that you want to apply, right? That's how marriage is, right? It's the reality, it's how things are on the ground. So that's the most important. Now, as for the question, the main question was, when do you approach family, parents, etc.? It should be as early as possible, to be honest. Again, I can't give you a specific timeline. It depends on the context, but as early as possible, right? If anything, there's no harm in involving them from the very beginning. There's benefit in involving from the very beginning, right? When I say involving, it doesn't mean that, okay, her father will be sat in front of you and she's sat there and he's staring at your face and you're having a conversation and you're shaking, right? Involvement, it means something else as opposed to just, being right there. There's a respectful way of, with boundaries of doing things, but involving people know, like it's good for your family to know, for elders to know, for people around you to know that you're interested in getting married, that, there's someone potentially there. There's no obligation. I know culturally there's a lot of pressure sometimes. It's like if you're speaking to someone, it's like, oh, that means you have to marry them. It's like they're expecting you to get married. Okay, but if everyone just, they know there's something happening, they're there to support you, the other side is there to support, I think it's a healthy thing. But of course, I'm saying it from an ideal perspective. Like, that means the family know, you know your boundaries, they know, and the involvement is a good thing to have. Like I said, even for, let's say, guys, if a guy is speaking to someone and there's no family, nobody's involved in the process, he could potentially do what? He could potentially prolong and lead this person on, because there's nothing, he doesn't fear anything, there's nobody involved. But if he knows, the family know about this, there's some involvement, he's not going to mess about now. He knows, okay, this is a serious thing. I'm not going to drag this on for a long time. I want to make sure I respect you. I respect, your family, and let's see how this goes. So I would say as early as possible is, as per custom, is always the best way to go. Wallahu alam. Any other questions, inshallah? There's one over here we're going to come to, yes. Inshallah. It was, yeah.
Assalamu alaikum. Jazakallah khair. I really enjoyed your presentation. Jazakallah. One thing you brought up at the beginning was the whole movie thing and the Lion King and all those romances that we've all witnessed. What I find interesting is that that movie specifically is A Circle of Life, and we see how that circle ends up. When movies are not rom-coms, with family drama, so the one that ends up with a wedding ends at the wedding, and the one that wakes up with him being sick or her being sick or financial issues, all the other stuff that happens in every single marriage, they don't call that a romance. They call that drama. So I think for us as Muslims, we need to realize that what you said, marriage and love has stages, and we need to prepare for each stage. The romance bit is great at the beginning, but to keep it alive for decades would require an investment of time and education. So I just wanted to say that. And another thing, the brother asked earlier when to ask the family and how soon to let them know. I think the challenge is that our communities are multicultural in the UK and in Canada. And in my culture, it might be, or in my family culture, it might be that my dad wants to know before I know, right? And in some cultures, in some family cultures, it's even worse than the Egyptian culture. It's like the familial culture. If my dad hears that you talk to me before you talk to him, that might mean that we're not getting married, period, right? So I think what needs to happen is that we as young brides and grooms, we need to have a conversation with our parents. We need to understand what their expectations are before the groom shows up. So the brother asked, when is the best time to ask? That's a very impossible question to answer because every family will be different. And I think brothers and sisters need to realize what are the expectations of your parents. I'm not saying we have to follow all of them. I think we have to have those conversations in our homes. I remember my kids are all married, alhamdulillah. And I remember we always had conversations about marriage when my kids were 9, 10, 11. Because by the time you get to 16, nobody wants to talk about marriage. Anyway, so I just think those conversations are not happening today. And that's causing a lot of confusion for the grooms. When he asks a question like that, which is very valid, he doesn't know when to approach. There is no ayah, and there are no hadith for that. But we need to understand that every family is different, every culture is different. And I think it's safest if the brothers don't ask the sister directly, and they don't ask the family directly. They ask someone who knows the family and who knows the girl, and vice versa. Because that way you can start a process without a lot of bumps, because maybe she's already talking to somebody. Maybe her parents don't want her discussing marriage until she's done her PhD. We have families like that, right? That my daughter's not getting married until she's done 3 degrees. So if a brother's approaching and she's still in her master's, it might not be a good time. And I'm not agreeing with any of this. I'm just telling you, our families, from what I've seen, our families have very weird cultures, and they're not based on deen. They're based on, Baba wants me to have a doctorate. Or Mama. It could be either. Jazakallah khair.
Jazakallah khair. Really insightful and very true. Like, I agree pretty much with every point. I've seen many situations like this, you know, subhanAllah, where, you know, two people start talking. You know, we spoke about attachments and things like this, it forms. And then the first time ever in their life that they've even spoken about marriage is after they found someone. And then they go to the parents. And the parents are like, it's just a massive shock to the system. And obviously parents want to be involved. And, you know, there's a lot of culture, as we mentioned, and sometimes the cultures are different. So the first time you speak about marriage to your parents or family should not be after you found someone there. These conversations should have been had, ideally, like that's the best situation to be in. Otherwise, and then this is where there's a lot of problems, where now they come to the Imam, they come to the Sheikh. Oh, Sheikh, my parents are being really unreasonable. I found someone to marry, and they're saying no. And they give you that much without any context, and you think, oh, that's really bad. Why are they saying no for? But then you find out, actually, you went, you did your thing without any involvement of any family, and then you decided you threw it on them and expected them to just accept straight away. And then now they're saying, hold on a second, no, and of course there's going to be some friction there, and now you're in this situation. You're in a really difficult situation now, where it's almost like you have to win them over, and whatever. Now there's the drama that begins, the family drama begins, okay? So that shouldn't be the first time you speak about marriage. And like yesterday, for those of you who came to the Surah Yusuf session, we spoke about the open channels of communication between parents and children. That ideally should happen, like parents have a responsibility to keep things open with their children and make it comfortable. Children have a responsibility to approach family and involve them and speak to them. Ideally, again, it's an ideal situation, but that's how we should, inshallah, have this. And by the way, I'm not a fan. In the UK, we have some social media figures who they like in videos and things, they promote this idea that when you see a sister, brother, when you see a sister, you go straight to her and you ask for her wali's number. Okay? And then you get her wali's number, and then you go and you speak to her father and get the marriage conversation going. Okay? Now, why do I disagree with that for? I think it's not even practical. What are you saying? You're saying that you see a sister and you go up to her, which is a very weird situation, by the way. If I'm a sister and a guy came up to me and said, I want your father's number. What on earth? And if I have a daughter, if someone rang me, right, let's say my daughter gave my number to someone, right? They rang me and said, hey, uncle, I want to speak to you about marrying your daughter. I'd be like, who the hell are you? Like, what even is this, right? It's a very weird thing. And then the most problematic thing, putting all of that aside, the most problematic thing I find from this is, what are you promoting? You're promoting, you see someone and you want to marry them. Based on what? Or you go up to her and you ask for her father's number. Based on what? You want to marry a girl after seeing her for the first time? It's such an immature thing to do. You're not ready for marriage if you see someone and you want to marry them today. Again, this love at first sight stuff. You can see someone and like them. Doesn't mean you go and propose to them. It's a really odd idea. It's like you can't control your desire. You see that you walk past, you've eaten food, you've had lunch, and then you're walking on the street, and then you pass a nice restaurant, and you see the food, and you're like, okay, I need to eat again. That means you can't control your desire, correct? So you see someone and you want to marry them. So for me, this whole thing is impractical. That's not how things work. So I'm not a fan of this. But anyway, it's a separate topic. Let's take one more question, inshallah. Some final question at the front, yeah, inshallah. Yeah.
When it comes to like intercultural marriages, in your opinion, because I've heard different opinions, but you've obviously officiated a lot of intercultural marriages.
Yeah.
What are some things you should be looking out for, like in your opinion, when it comes to families specifically? Because you said look at family compatibility as well.
Yeah, excellent. Very good question. Intercultural marriages. So last year I did something very interesting, which is I made notes. Every nikah ceremony that I officiated last year, 2024, I noted some important details of everyone. Some real stats. So last year I officiated 60 ceremonies in 2024. And from those 60, just over 1/3 of those marriages were intercultural. This is in the UK, right? Now, that for me is surprising because 10 years ago, this was like, intercultural marriages were like really, is a problem, right? It's unheard of almost, right? It's a big thing. Now, more than 1/3 of just the ones I did, imagine how many other marriages, right, are intercultural. This shows things are shifting. Why are things shifting? Because naturally, look at the countries we're in. We're no longer first generation, we're second, third generation now. So you've been brought up in this country, most likely even your parents. If they weren't born in this country, they've been in this country for decades, right? And now there's multiculturalism, You know, you don't have how it was before, where you just have just a small pocket of one nationality. Now you have so many, right? So as a result, what's happened is people, even the parents, the elders, have opened their eyes to, okay, wow, there's more options. Before we didn't even know that of these cultures. Now there's many options, right? So even among those 1/3 of the intercultural, many of them were even reverts, like, you know, people converts to Islam, they convert and then they get married to someone, you know, from a nationality and they were born Muslim. This is very common now. So what I say about this is, if you're looking to get married, okay, and let's say, firstly, by the way, there's nothing wrong with wanting to marry within your culture. You know, it's not racist to want to marry your own culture. Some people, that's their preference. And for other people, they're open to the idea of marrying outside of their culture, whatever the culture is, right? So, for some people, that is part of the compatibility. They want to marry someone who's similar in the sense that, okay, similar culture, customs, upbringing, food, language, even like my parents, they speak a certain first language. I want, you know, communication. That's fine, like, for you to have that. Of course, being open is good. So what I would say is, if that's your preference, no problem. But if you're open to marrying outside of your culture, that's good. But also, you have to understand that with that can come, like, you know, again, that's been romanticized as well, you know, marrying outside of culture. It's like become something that people are wanting to do. Why? And I found actually that it's probably because their upbringing or their experience with their own culture, they saw a lot of negative or toxic things, and they want to move away from their culture and marry someone completely different so that they don't have to deal with that stuff. I found this actually to be one of the main reasons after speaking to people. So look, if you're open to it, fine, but just remember that there are going to be, like, you could say, differences. Not necessarily bad differences, but you know, you have to just, you know, the whole expectation is you have to be real, that when you are marrying someone outside of culture, there's going to be a lot of differences, like the way you were brought up. If you're open to that, no problem. And you could argue that being in this country for as long as we have been and being brought up here, we don't have like the nationality or the culture that we had. It's there, but now we have the Western culture, we have, you know, upbringing here. So you're more on par with someone because you have had a similar upbringing, even though you come from different cultures or nationalities, but technically you have more in common actually because you were brought up here. So that argument is valid as well. I would just, again, this is something to factor in, the family side of things. When you speak with someone, if there are things that are important to you, in some cultures, some things are more of a priority, in other cultures it's not. For you, based on your upbringing, maybe something you expect from marriage. I don't know what it might be, okay? But their culture that's not normal. So those things, just think about, have those conversations. But for me, I think it's a positive. We're moving, and definitely in the UK anyway, where towards a point where it's becoming more and more acceptable, it's becoming more and more normal. These marriages are working, great. But the default always is your own. That's actually the default, really. You know, similarities is always a good thing. But differences is not a bad thing. You can complement each other as well. So, wallahu alam, main thing to have these conversations with that person, inshallah. Right? I think we will conclude here, inshallah, if that's okay. If you have any other questions, if you want to grab me before you go, no problem, inshallah. This is actually the final event from the tour that we've done in Canada. I've been here, alhamdulillah, now. Tomorrow will be 10 days. So we did a lot of events. This was the last one, alhamdulillah. So I've had a great time, my first visit to North America. Tomorrow we return to the UK. So keep us in your du'as, inshallah, and I hope that I get to see you again. Inshallah, Jazakumullah khair once again for attending and for the masjid and for this program. I pray it was of benefit. Inshallah, hopefully I can see you before I go. We do have some copies of the book left, last few copies if you want, inshallah. And yeah, keep us in your du'as. Allah bless you all. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.